Um, so okay, so I just quickly say I'm in Liberia. My connection, I'm on mobile internet, so I might drop off. So um, hopefully Andy and others can kind of help with leading the call. But I just wanted to say hello to everybody. And the goal of this call really, we were set in Copenhagen. A lot of people at this technical input to the strategic review, and we were sort of thinking actually there's a lot of people and a lot of stuff going on in the community around IATI, and we should be kind of encouraging this and supporting this more. And there's lots of stuff that we can do, we can get on with, that also isn't reliant on the secretariat, which is obviously limited in terms of their resources and everything else. So the purpose of the quarter is really, we have like a bunch of principles, which is in the Google Doc links from the discuss post. But basically, we want to really focus on being sort of positive and engaging and encouraging to each other that's also active in this space, and to be kind of very practical. And that also basically means, talking about what we're actually doing, and not volunteering other people for work as well. So yes, keeping on what are you getting on with, and if you need some support or feedback or whatever from other people, then yeah, reach out and tell other people what you're doing. So the structure, we had like one kind of test call, about five or six of us, I think, about just over a month ago. And the structure we kind of had was, first have like a bit of a hello, but then most of the focus of the time is structured around a couple of presentations of people talking about things that they've made. And then this can lead into a bit of a Q&A of people kind of saying what they like about things, or what they think could be done a bit better, or other ideas and stuff like this. So so today we have hopefully two presentations. One from Andy, who's going to talk about IATI Canary and tweeting issues with IATI data and helping to increase the quality of IATI data. And secondly, hopefully from Seem, who has been working on the IATI data store. He's not online yet, but hopefully he will join us at some point. Unless there's a guest also that doesn't have a name, so unless Seem happens to be lurking as that guest, hopefully he will join us at some point. One other thing I want to say, I'm here also with my colleague Nathan from the Ministry of Finance. We've been working together on like a project dashboard, and we're starting to look a bit more about how we can use IATI data. But he's also staying here with me, so hello from us. So Andy, I guess, unless anyone else has something else they would like to add to talk about already at this point, should we go to Andy?
No one else? Okay, I'm happy to start. I'm going to try and screen share. Sorry, I should say, hi, I'm Andy Lowles. I previously worked for Publish Free Fund, and I now work for a fact-checking organisation in London. But I'm still involved in IATI stuff. So let me start. I've got 5 minutes. I'm going to talk about the thing that was built, which was IATI Canary, and then if I've got time, I'm going to quickly try and talk about 2 more things, but like maybe just a sentence on each, because 5 minutes isn't very long. So so these are ideas. We have this IATI Ideas project board where me and Matt and others, everyone is welcome to contribute kind of ideas that you have, the cool things that IATI tools that you think should exist, or proposals or things that you're building, just to let people know. So I'm going to just talk about this. I'm going to talk about this one first of all, which is to make a tweet bot that uses IATI Canary output. So last year, I think, or earlier this year, I built a thing called IATI Canary. It's an early warning system for IATI publishers. So you can sign up with your email address and select a publisher, and you can see when there are errors with data sets, so data sets that are currently broken. So we can look now and see, like, for instance, this is a recent one actually, all of the...
And are you sharing a screen?
Oh, shoot, yeah, I mean to. Oh, I failed at pressing start sharing.
Okay, we can see.
Is it okay now?
Yeah, we can see.
Okay, sorry. So here's the project board that I was talking about, Code for IATI/IATI Ideas. Don't worry too much about that. And so I'm going to talk about this tweet bot that uses IATI Canary output. So sorry, this is IATI Canary, an early warning system for IATI publishers. So this shows you can sign up for email alerts. So I can put Andy and select a particular publisher and sign up, and I'll receive an alert when any data sets for that publisher break. So if they're not available in any way. You can look at, for instance, you can see this monitors the status of all the data sets on the registry, on the IATI registry. So for instance, one that recently broke, OCHA data is currently broken. We can sort of click through to that one and see that all of their data is currently broken. If you check out a data set, yeah, that's definitely the case. So if OCHA have signed up for emails, then they'll be alerted to that. But my concern is that maybe people don't sign up to the email address, they don't know about this service yet. So I wanted to set up a Twitter bot that also sends out these alerts. And this is kind of the format. So this is an example tweet that I've done. So it's not this was me doing this manually, just to kind of get an idea of how this should maybe look. So there's a little tweeting canary that lets people know when there's a problem with IATI datasets. So this is saying there's 104 datasets, and it goes through to this page where you can see the problem. There's already some suggestions on how to improve this, but I'm interested to hear more from others if they have other ideas. So Matt has helpfully I don't know if he's on the call, but contributed some ideas on this to say, figure out if there's a way to @ the relevant person. I don't know whether that's a doable thing, but there's some ideas about how to maybe do that. But I think definitely using the hashtag IATI is something that people quite commonly do for IATI stuff, so maybe that's useful. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say on that one. Mark, have I got time to talk about maybe one more thing? Maybe 2 was ambitious.
I think 2 is fine, but maybe should
Quicker.
we? Do you want to pause and ask for?
Oh yeah, sure.
Thoughts first, and then you can move on. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So I wanted to ask one thing, which is, so when a publisher fixes their data, do they get like hooray, congratulations, good job, you fix your data type tweet?
So that's a really good point. So at the moment, I just searched for the publish what you find, because they recently. So at the moment, it is recorded when something's recently fixed, but I think that's a good idea, definitely, to also tweet that information and maybe also email people subscribing that information. None of those things happen yet, except for it just gets recorded here. But I think a tweet would be really good as some kind of positive reinforcement of an action has been taken. Yeah, that's a really good idea. Yeah, okay. I think that's a good addition. I'll make a note of that. Yeah, anyone else has any thoughts on this? Cool, so maybe people can continue thinking about it, and I'll talk quickly about one more thing, which is kind of, I was hoping Seam would be on, because it relates to the data store, so it kind of comes after. Teams talk. I hope he's here somewhere. So is that okay, Mark? Can I talk about this one? Oh, Mark's disappeared. So
yeah, of course, go ahead.
Cool. So I'm sure people will have heard that there's a new IATI data store that's currently in testing phase, but testing it is kind of at the moment feels a little bit limited to quite technical people because there isn't a user interface for it. Now we have with the old data store, we had a user interface for it. It was called the Query Builder, and so I thought it would be a quick and easy, a quick thing to just repurpose that Query Builder so that it would work with the new data store, so that people can test test the new data store using that. So I've done that here. So this is maybe familiar to some people. This is the data store query builder. It outputs CSV, but now the links that you get from it point at testdatastore.iatistandard.org. So the response is coming from the new data store. So I'll post this link so you can. I'll probably post this link on Discuss. Actually, I kind of wanted to check with Seam whether he's okay with this. And I should also mention one caveat of this is that the new data store does a lot of stuff, and a lot of it isn't covered in the filters that you have here. So there's actually loads more stuff that you can do that's not accounted for here. So that's kind of, I don't want people to think, oh, is this all I can do? But yeah, hopefully this is a useful thing and more people can test the data store using this. That's it. Any thoughts on that?
Cool. Yeah, anybody got any thoughts, comments, concerns, ideas like to share?
Maybe I'll just mention. So I did it this way because it was very quick. It kind of took an evening, less than an evening to do. But I think it would be preferable to do. I don't really like the user interface of this query builder at all, and I think it would be preferable to use something maybe more similar to. Is it USAID Explorer? Is that what I'm thinking of, Mark? There's a tool that's got a much nicer user interface for kind of selecting filters. So it would be really good to kind of maybe think more carefully about how this user interface should look and work. But this was kind of the quick first pass, kind of the minimum viable product kind of approach.
Yeah, I mean, I think you did this last night, right? So yeah.
yeah.
It's good to just have something working, right? So, but yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, I mean, there were the kind of think about like I think the USA Data Explorer is a nice example of how you might want to think about kind of the filters and stuff. Any other thoughts? So I've also got one other thing I can talk about. I mean, I did talk last week, so I don't really want to kind of monopolize the call with my stuff. And so if there's anything else anyone else would like to talk about, then great. Otherwise, I can talk a little bit about a couple of things we've been doing in Liberia that relate to IATI data, if that's good. Should I do that? Do you think, Andy?
Yeah, go for it. And maybe then, if we've still time, I'll talk about my third thing after that. Otherwise, it's just me talking for a big block of time. So
Yeah.
I go for it, I think.
Otherwise it's me talking, so that's also fine, I think. Okay, yeah, let's do this. So so I just shared this is okay, no? This is my idea. Okay, cool. So yeah, hopefully, can everyone see my screen? Can you see this?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is the Liberia project dashboard, and we're just sort of slowly, we've been building this for about a year in Liberia. It's quite like a simple project database, basically, to capture information on projects in Liberia. So we started originally with basically a big Excel data set, and then slowly kind of reading this into the system to be able to start to capture data in a more structured way. But definitely being very sensitive to the fact that so electricity and internet can sometimes be intermittent, so we also need to work a lot with Excel as well. But as we've gone through and started to build out this dashboards and start to get more comfortable with some of the financial data that we're capturing in the system, we've had like more interest, especially from senior policymakers, in thinking about okay, what are projects actually achieving, and so we're really trying to make sure that the dashboard doesn't add like an enormous amount of extra burden in terms of data collection, because also the aid management unit here is relatively small, and so we don't want to add an enormous amount more burden to an already quite challenging task. And so we've been thinking a bit about when we're tracking the projects outcomes. There's two things that we've come up with so far that are interesting to look at. One is disbursement rates. So comparing what a donor said that they were going to spend in a particular year with what's actually being spent. And this definitely relies on improving the quality of the financial data we're collecting. So we're starting to look at how, having got comfortable with this kind of Excel-based and process in the dashboard and everything, how we could begin to use financial data from IATI to kind of strengthen that the sort of financial side of things. But then looking at results, we're particularly interested in large projects which are implemented through government. And so this is particularly projects from the African Development Bank and the World Bank. And so we've begun to look a little bit about how would we capture this sort of results data, and what would that look like. So far, basically, what I did is I built like a user interface to be able to enter, to be able to add new indicators for manually through the system. But obviously, there's lots of data that from IATI we could use, even just to start with getting the list of all the indicators. And then hopefully starting to look maybe at like the targets and actuals and stuff over time. And so this is the World Bank's IATI data, or my interpretation of it at least. And so here we just did like a really simple display which shows one row per indicator, and you can see that what's being actually achieved as a percentage of the target. So then I just create like some simple like bars where I think less than 80 gets you yellow, less than 40 goes red. I don't know if we have any red ones. No, we don't. And then if it's over 80, then you get a green. And so this has been quite nice to also thinking through like technically the database structure and stuff like this, but also thinking through how could we start to look at this data and use this data, and also in some ways are there any limitations with the way that the current data is published or with the IATI standard that we would like to build upon a bit further. So I've got two quick thoughts on this. One is in terms of aggregating across indicators. So generally what we're going to be interested in is looking across lots of different projects. Where do we have problems? So which are the projects that are not really delivering? Because then at the Ministry of Finance, if lots of these projects are implemented by line ministries or by project implementation units and line ministries, the Ministry of Finance's job is really then to look across and see what's going on and where are the major issues. So we're not really interested necessarily in individual indicators and whether particular indicators are achieving their results or not. But we might be when we drill down. But we're more interested in kind of being able to look across. And so we're starting to think about like how would you aggregate this data up? And the way we've thought so far is, well, initially I just did like a simple average of all of the indicators, but obviously that doesn't really make sense because you could have one indicator that's done 170% almost of its target, and another one, a number of other ones that have not. And so we thought like the maybe more interesting way of doing this is like having the number of green indicators versus the yellow indicators and the red indicators. So you can then start to look across projects, which ones have more reds, for example. And the second thought is, so there's something there about like how do you aggregate across, to say like this project's kind of doing well, this project's not doing so well. And we have some ideas on how to do this, but it's a really initial. So yeah, feedback is really, really appreciated. The second thing is thinking a bit about the standard as well, because in the data at the moment, it's not lots of the data it's a bit different. Even just looking between the World Bank and the AFDB, it's structured slightly differently. And so what we're also kind of interested in is being able to track progress over time. And currently the data, most of it only has like one per indicator, one target and one actual, and normally it's like the most recent actual. But what we're also interested in maybe is looking at the progress over time, because if a project, like if an indicator was doing very badly a couple of years ago, but now it's doing better today, but still overall it's not, it's much better, but it's still not really there. It's a different story from, the indicators like consistently bad over 3 years or getting worse, So looking at the trajectory is also kind of useful. And so, yeah, having a bit more of the like, and you can do this in the standard, but it's just not very consistent at the moment, the way that different donors, I think, are using it. I think it would be good to think a bit more about like, how do we, even just taking a couple of donors, how do we kind of, maybe kind of using some of this work to say, what would be a really useful way of publishing this data in terms of then using it for managing the results type thing. So anyway, I'm going to stop there, but I don't know if that makes sense and it's useful kind of contribution. But any thoughts on any of the stuff so far? Like, yeah. I should probably still ask as well if I'm still connected.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah.
Mark, so were you saying that tracking over time is something that is sort of one to do in the future, or something that you've already started looking at?
So so the way that this, and I can show this actually, if I look at this, so this is like a really simple interface that I've been designing for being able to enter new indicators. But obviously, where there are existing indicators, we can generate the whole thing based on that. So below here, you can have like a number of different reporting periods, and this is kind of consistent with the way that the data is structured in IATI as well. You can have a number of different periods, and you can have a target and an actual. And if you look at the original results frameworks, you can see they're broken down by how much you actually planning to achieve by year, and then there's reporting on this as well. And this is like really consistent across lots of the results frameworks that I've looked at. But at the moment, the data in IATI, it's not showing like this the multiple reporting periods. For example, here you can see it's for like 2007 to 2015. This is from the IATI data from the World Bank, for example, and the actual results framework, and in fact on the World Bank's website as well, you can see per year reporting periods as well. And yeah, so it would maybe be interesting if you could see like the number of the target in each year, and then I think on the World Bank website also you can see like a little, for each indicator you can see a little chart that shows this one's kind of doing better, this one's doing worse, and that's what kind of made me think of this as well. That by looking at the World Bank's projects and operations portal, it could be quite interesting and useful to be able to chart a result over time. So you could say, okay, this one is not really doing so well, but it's definitely doing better, and it's kind of like a bit more like back on track, versus this one's not doing well and it's getting worse. You know what I mean? It's kind of like a different story. But yeah.
Okay, so that's cool. So this data is captured, it's just not, and it's recorded in some places, it's just not recorded in IATI data.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay. So that's kind of a limitation before you can start thinking about an interface for it.
Yeah, so just trying to like join things together between these two presentations. You know, thinking about if you know, we find this kind of stuff. I mean, another interesting thing I also found is like measurement type and unit of measure. So there is, you can sort of say measurement type, although the the actual codes that are in IATI for measurement type for an indicator are not always they're not actually very clear. One says unit and the other one says what is it, cardinal, or I don't know, something like that, whatever it is. Whatever it means, basically the same thing as unit, basically. And there's two that are kind of essentially the same thing, but there's no place of saying unit of measure. And this is really, I've seen this both in the World Bank's data and the AFDB data. They have the unit of measure, but there's actually not really anywhere like to put it consistently. And the AFDB does put it in somewhere in like the indicator title or something like this, you know. But yeah, this will be like a useful thing to actually be able to capture. But so kind of linking back the two presentations, one thing I was also thinking is, you know, this kind of stuff you don't really, you know, it would be really nice if there was a way to, you know, or like a more consistent way of being able to feedback these kinds of discussions or thoughts or whatever back to donors to say, hey, you know, this is really cool that you have all this data, and look, we can start to do some really interesting stuff with this. But if you publish like this thing or like this thing slightly differently, it would be even more useful. And I think we've had some discussions in the past about how you could like feedback like data quality issues or requests or whatever. But this is, for me, it feels like another example where like, yeah, this could be quite cool.
Mike,
Hey, Jimmy.
I just wanted to sorry, this is Jim. I'm also a colleague of Mike here at the Ministry of Finance. I just wanted you to talk a little bit about how eventually, because we've always had this discrepancy in the data when we report. Sometimes it's different. It's almost different from what is recorded in IAT with regards to the information on a specific donor. And sometimes the problem sometimes it comes from in country. So my understanding that is that eventually what you're doing with the Library Project dashboard is that in the long run, the idea is to be able to interface, to have the two system interface, so that we can be able to get that data directly from IAT into our system. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, sorry, so I should have said also, yeah, Jimmy's upstairs, and he's also going to come to the IATI members assembly, I think, in a couple of weeks as well. So you'll see him there. If for those people that are also going to that. Yeah, so exactly. So yeah, it's definitely, so we're starting the project dashboard, like, having worked on IATI stuff before. I've had this a lot in my head. Okay, yeah, we could look at how we can use IATI data to help, with some of the stuff I said at the start around, and Jimmy said around kind of like, how do we get better financial data into the system as well? And to start with, I really wanted to make sure the system was kind of like stable and working well, like for the existing data before, thinking about how we might want to change that data, because it's kind of, you want to like make sure the system is working well and like build confidence in it, and like be able to trust that it's interpreting the data correctly before doing anything more like kind of radical with the data, right? But yeah, so now that we've got like the basics a bit more in place, we are looking a bit more about how we could use the IATI data, and it's definitely going to be like a donor by donor process, because certain donors, the data we can't really use it at this point. But there are some donors that we can, and then there are other donors that we can use in, sort of a partial way maybe. So, for example, just talking about a couple of donors. So, for general IATI data import, we could use, I'm pretty sure, the data from USAID, and that would make a lot of sense here. It's a big donor, and there's quite a lot of reporting to do. So this would hopefully kind of streamline reporting a bit. And when we look at USAID's data, the titles and descriptions can be variable. This is an issue we discussed with USAID before, and we have some kind of ideas about how we could sort of work on this together. But the financial data is generally quite good because it's coming out of USAID's financial systems. So we can think about how could we use that data kind of intelligently in a way that we keep the existing titles and descriptions, for example, but we could take the financial data from USAID in a way that kind of looks sensible. For other donors, it's different. So, for example, like AFDB, probably we could take the data from them as well from comparing it. It looks quite good quality, and it's quite consistent in terms of the pieces of information that we also request in Liberia. The World Bank is an interesting case because, and this is like an example where it is quite different in terms of the numbers that come out. And the reason for this is because the World Bank doesn't publish trust funds at the moment, even though in its IATI data, even though these can be quite big source of funds for certain projects. So we've just been doing work the last couple of days, especially, and looking at how we could use data from Client Connection, which is an internal system, a system that the government has access to, and each government has access to, to get data from the World Bank, to get this slightly more detailed data. And basically, the detail is just to have both the trust funds and also which source is funding a particular disbursement, for example. And that's quite important to know whether it's a grant or loan, which is already in IATI, obviously, but also to know, how much money is left on a particular fund source, on a particular loan, for example, how much is left to be dispersed. This is information that we should be able to get from IATI, and maybe if we added, one extra field somewhere, to say, the particular loan or some loan number that it's coming out of, we would be able to use it there. But for now, we're thinking about how we could do some like automatic import of Client Connection data from the World Bank, basically, to kind of meet that need in the near time. So yeah, it kind of depends a bit from donor to donor, but we need like different strategies for dealing with each of them. But definitely, yeah, we can start to look at kind of using some donor data from IATI to just streamline reporting. So. Yeah. So is any other like thoughts or comments or stuff from people? I mean, is this useful, or you find it interesting and stuff? Also the format, yeah, kind of comments on that's also super welcome. So otherwise, maybe Andy also wants to talk about his third point. Okay, Andy, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, yeah. Let me screen share again. So it's a bit niche, but I'll just so apologies for that, but I'll just I'll try and explain what I'm getting at here. So IATI has a reference site. You might have seen it, and this is like the documentation for the standard. And it doesn't look great. It uses a lot of the old branding, and it looks a little bit dated. But there's one really cool thing about this, and it's that it's generated directly from the schema and other source control things. So we can see exactly when changes are made to this, and we can see exactly like why the changes were made. So all of that information gets logged, and So we have kind of a built-in paper trail. Now, there's recently been talk, maybe at the last members' assembly, of moving this reference site into the main IATI website, which is, and I think, which is cool because it will mean an update of the branding and maybe other improvements. But my concern about this is, which I've expressed sort of whenever this is raised, is that it's important that this stays still generated from the IATI schema, because the IATI schema is the bit that we all agree on, or the bit that we all sort of discuss and agree on updates to, and that sort of thing. We have consensus in the, and we have a process to making updates to it. So it's really important that that we're open and that it's that changes to that are visible. So yeah, there's transparency around that process. So something that Mark actually suggested was that actually rather than doing something that might involve quite a lot of work in order to move this reference site into the main IATI website, what we're really talking about here is just like reskinning, what's called reskinning. So just like a rebrand of this, but all the underlying code could still remain the same. Yesterday, so I did the query builder the night before last, and last night I did this, which was just to demonstrate like a proof of concept. So I tried reskinning this reference site using the new sort of IATI library. It doesn't look great at the moment, but it's not quite right. You can see there's some problems here. This menu over here is like giant, but there's kind of the basics are in there. It's generated in the same way that the previous site was generated. So that's cool. So it's still generated directly from the schema, so you still have that paper trail of changes. So yeah, there's more work needed on this, and this is really something I think for the technical team to kind of look at and consider. But I just wanted to kind of demonstrate that it's possible to do, and probably not that much work to do. This is as far as I got in maybe an hour. So I think if you spent like a week on this, you could definitely finish it off. Right, that's all I have to say on that anyway. Any thoughts at all?
I think this is really cool, Andy, and it's cool because people have kind of, obviously for a long time it's been tricky to get your head a bit around IATI and the standard, all this kind of stuff. And partly that's because there's obviously a lot to take in, but partly that's because of, I guess, the way that the information about what the standard is and stuff is presented. That's been not very user friendly, and so yeah, like there's been this discussion for a long time about like, oh, can we make the standard website look a bit better, and that could kind of go in one direction, which is like kind of put it all into some nice shiny nice kind of shiny system, but which is then harder to track changes in the standard. And I think it's really, really important that if it's a standard, like, it should be stable over time, right? And that you should be able to see very clearly when any particular change has been made to it, and that that's gone through a process and there's been consensus, all that kind of thing. I think it's really important for like sort of trust and stability for the standard as well. So this is cool, because I think it shows you can get those advantages of having like a nicer kind of more shiny website and stuff, without without having to go the disadvantages of kind of not being able to track anymore, like these kinds of changes and improvements. So I think it's really cool. And it's really cool proof of concept. And I think actually it's quite good as well, like considering you only did it in 1 hour. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you get kind of a lot of early gains with this sort of thing. Like it's kind of easy to do the first bit, and then it's incrementally harder to to make it all work. But honestly, I don't think there's that much more work involved here. I think this could easily, this is the thing that could be done. But I'm not sure who should do it, because this should, I think, this is probably something for, this should really live as part of the IATI managed documentation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's good though to do like this kind of, that's what the rest of us can do, in terms in the community can still kind of come up with like proof of concepts and prototypes and stuff like this, right? That hopefully can provide ideas to tech team or to other members or whatever when they're thinking about these kinds of issues. There are different options. And so I think that's really cool. Yeah. So I guess so far what we discussed, we've got IATI Canary. It's a way for publishers, well, I guess particularly publishers, but also anyone else to be able to, is like using maybe a particular publisher's data set to be able to get like email alerts on when a publisher's data is broken. Like, so really simple, like early warning system, I think it said. So while you might want to, when the new IATI validator comes, to have a more thorough check of, exactly how is your data doing, you can at least just see like on a really basic level, did something go wrong, like the IT people changed the server or the whatever it might be, and everything broke, for some reason. So I think it's really cool, like quite, simple, cool to do that, right? Then the second thing was, what remind me, Andy? What's the second thing you presented?
It was the query builder for the new data store.
Yeah, so at the moment, I think there's a new query builder coming out from the tech team and from Seam probably in the next couple of weeks. But this is cool because, like in the interim, especially before the members assembly as well, maybe it's useful to be able to take a look at, the sort of data that's coming out of this. And, for slightly, it doesn't you don't have to be like a developer necessarily, but just with some sort of technical skills, I guess, to see, how's this data looking. So that's hopefully a useful resource just to take a look at. I guess, Andy, if you want to put the links, we can put the links in the discuss post, right? Or something.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And the third thing of then, this idea around, if you want to make the IATI standard site look nice, maybe you could think about just kind of retheming it without having to do like a really complicated like reworking or restructuring of all of the underlying code and stuff. You can get quite a long way just through scheming. Yeah, and then the stuff I was talking about, thinking about results data in the IATI standard and how we're thinking of using that here in Liberia, and how thinking about how we should feedback ideas on things that might be nice to improve in a couple of publishers' data. And finally, just a few thoughts on financial, how we're looking at using financial data. So just quick summary. I mean, does anyone else have anything they want to? Any other comments or thoughts on any of those things? Okay.
Can I just mention, because it's a shame we don't have Seam, and also I kind of hoped we'd have Rolf as well, who's building the validator, because you mentioned validator, and actually I kind of think Canary is like a really basic kind of rubbish version of the validator. Like it's
not rubbish, but like it's kind of a much simpler tool for doing validation. But I spotted that, so I checked OCHA FTS data on the new validator, and it shows validation for the most recently working version of the data, which I guess is interesting if you just care about validation. But it's kind of important for the publisher to know this data is broken, and the validator doesn't seem to tell you that information. So maybe that's something, I don't know, something for the validator to do. Maybe I'll pass that on to Rob, because I was kind of surprised to learn that.
Yeah, it's a nice idea. I mean, and I think that's quite like a important thing to say as well. You know, like the point of doing, you know, as you know, all sort of doing different things. It's not, you know, in competition or anything. Hopefully, it's kind of like useful ideas about how else we can, you know, think about stuff. And so, you know, for example, yeah, it would be probably cool if some kind of validation tool would also have this basic level of validation, right? You know, like all of your data sets are broken, for example, in a much more like simple way. It could be a interesting thing to think about including maybe in the validator going forward. So, okay, so I mean, yeah, unless anyone else wants to add something else, I mean, so I mean, I think we really want to like encourage, you know, like kind of discussion, feedback and stuff in these calls and stuff. So yeah, like, and we also really want to encourage other people to, you know, present on things that you're doing, or you know, whatever else, you know, you've maybe been working on or had some issues with, you'd like to talk with other people as well. I think we'll do the next call in about a month again, and maybe, you know, if I think Seem was planning to present something this time, so maybe there was a mix up in time zones or something. But maybe next time he can as well, and perhaps Rolf as well if the validator's ready by that point. But if anyone else has anything they want to present, then you know, please do. Yeah, I'm quite pleased though that we had, you know, 10 people join the call, which is quite nice, and stayed until now. So yeah, if you have anything else you would like to, or any comments or feedback you would like to add, then please do. But otherwise, thank you very much for joining and for listening.
Yeah, I guess we'll use the discuss post for sharing like any extra information, or does that sound all right? And I'll put the recording on there.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks, Mark.
Great. Thanks, Andy. Thanks everyone for joining. Okay, have a good day, everyone. Bye.
Cheers.